If you're a lineman in charge of keeping the lights on, Granger understands that you go to great lengths and sometimes heights to ensure the power is always flowing, which is why you can count on Granger for professional-grade products and next-day delivery, so you have everything you need to get the job done. Call 1-800-GRANGER, click Granger.com, or just stop by. Granger, for the ones who get it done.
Cheers, Rockets fans. Welcome to The Logger Line, an exclusive podcast from the home of the Rockets.
Whoa!
Sports Talk 790.
Rockets!
The Logger Line is proudly served to you by Carbox Clutch City Lager.
It is good!
Oh, yeah? Red Nation, get ready. Get ready. The Logger Line starts now.
Welcome aboard. Welcome into a special NBA Draft Lottery episode of The Logger Line, as always served to you courtesy of Clutch City Lager of Carbach Brewing. I'm your host, Ben Dubose, editor of USA Today's Rockets Wire and a contributor to Sports Talk 790, the official flagship radio station of your Houston Rockets. This is going to be a bit of an unconventional episode because we are literally recording this during the draft lottery. We're talking now about 6:45, 15 minutes or so before the actual drawing gets underway. And you're going to get live reaction from myself and Paulo Alves, of course, our usual co-host and producer out of Portugal, to whatever happens for the Rockets. And the reason we're doing it this way, let's just be honest, it's more fun. It's more dramatic. We're going to have plenty of episodes in the weeks ahead in which we dive deep into the draft prospects and whoever the Rockets end up earning the right to draft after tonight. And of course, they're going to go through the process, start the combine this week in Chicago. GM Rafael Stone, head coach Ime Udoka, who of course will be the onstage representative at the lottery tonight. We're going to have weeks of analysis. The Rockets are going to go through the process themselves as they try and narrow it down. Well, unless the 14% shot happens and they actually get the right to draft Victor Wembanyama, which would be a no-brainer. But if they're not at 1, then there's going to be at least some decisions to be made. The Rockets can't fall out of the top 6. So if they're in that 2 through 6 range, there's going to be discussions to be had. And we'll have plenty of insight on that in the weeks ahead. I've already started working on some great guests to help us out with that. Unless it's Victor, in which case we'll just do some deep dives on Victor and it'll be a bit simpler. One last time, pray for Victor. Anyway, let's get started. We've got Paulo on. Your initial thoughts, a few minutes before the lottery, scale of 1 to 10, how nervous are you?
Listen, man, but just before we start, I just want to put the disclaimer out there that none of my takes tonight are legally what's the term? Are legally binding.
Yes.
Well, first of all, because I got COVID right now, it's hitting me really hard, and second, because the anxiety is through the roof. Like this is 2021 draft levels of anxiety. That being said, it's good anxiety because it's not the fear of losing something; it's the kind of the potential of like winning what would be the best prospect maybe ever, at the very least since LeBron James. I mean, we don't really need to get into too many introductions, but this is a 7'4" guy that moves like a guard, that has handles that, that not your typical big man handles where you can poke the ball away. His dribbling is actually like so close, so damn close to the floor. He's like, his chest is nearly touching his knees while he's dribbling. It's insane. He's a 3-level scorer. He can work both on ball and off ball. He can have the defensive impact of a defensive player of the year. And even though he's not known for it, he has some really good passing instincts, and a lot of it comes from the fact that he just sees over everyone. And the amount of times you go through his footage and the amount of times that he's getting triple teamed, and he just holds the ball up in the air and there's nothing anybody can do, and so it's easy to make the pass that way. It's just, if the Rockets get this guy, I don't think there's any comparison in any sport to the magnitude of an event like this one. If they do get him, if they don't, I'm plenty happy with Scoot Henderson, but on the other hand, I'm going to be ecstatic with Victor. I'm going to be really happy with Scoot. On the other hand, if we get 3 through 6, I'm going to be really disappointed because I made it a point this year that I would not tone down my feelings, that I would not, set myself, or that I would not be careful about not setting myself up for disappointment. So I'm fully emotionally invested. So yeah, it's gonna be either really happy or really sad.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that it's not 2018 or earlier, because if that were the case, the Rockets with the number 2 odds placement going in would have a much better shot at getting Victor or Scoot or any of those top prospects. Of course, starting in 2019, that's when the NBA flattened the lottery odds to disincentivize tanking. So even teams with maximum odds like the Rockets, the Pistons, and the Spurs only have a 14% shot at the top pick. Really, it wouldn't be a surprise if anyone, or almost anyone, I guess New Orleans, who barely missed the playoffs, would be a bit of a shock. But other than that, it would not be that big of a surprise if anyone were to get Wemby, because at the end of the day, what's the huge difference between a 14% shot, an 11% shot, a 9% shot, a 7% chance, and so on and so forth? It's extraordinarily unpredictable. And I like what Jackson Gatlin said about the 27% shot. That's if you add in the probability for number 1 or number 2 for the Rockets, that number 27.
If you're a lineman in charge of keeping the lights on, Granger understands that you go to great lengths and sometimes heights to ensure the power is always flowing, which is why you can count on Granger for professional-grade products and next-day delivery, so you have everything you need to get the job done. Call 1-800-GRANGER, click Granger.com, or just stop by. Granger, for the ones who get it done.
It goes back to the 0 for 27, the last time the Rockets were on the verge of a championship in 2018, Game 7 of the Western Conference Finals. Of course, the 0 for 27 held them back. Perhaps this is the good 27 in which the Rockets get in the upper 27% of outcomes and get one of those top 2 picks. Time will tell. But yeah, I'm a little more calm than 2 years ago, because it feels more like an opportunity. Certainly 2 years ago, Cade Cunningham and Jalen Green, Evan Mobley as well, were very good prospects. None of them were Wemby, but because of the pick swap with Oklahoma City, that if you weren't in the top 4 and there was a 48% shot at that, basically a coin flip, the fact that you could fall all the way to number 18 and get a prospect like Trey Mann, that's just an enormous drop off. And it felt like it could really set you back. With this, you're going to get a good prospect no matter what, be it Victor or Scoot, Amin Thompson, Jarris Walker, Brandon Miller. There's all sorts of prospects. You can throw in Cam Whitmore into that 3 through 6 range as well. That would be nice young pieces as you continue your rebuild around Jalen Green, Jabari Smith Jr., Alperen Şengün, Tari Eason, Kevin Porter Jr. They're nice building blocks. They could also be intriguing trade assets, because we know this is the last year for a while. The Rockets fully control their own draft pick, so they have no reason to lose anymore. We've talked about that plenty in the past. They're going to transition to winning. Yes, that could include a pursuit of James Harden. More on that in just a few moments before the lottery gets started. But as we look into the 2023 draft lottery, which is the last one that the Rockets fully control their pick, yeah, there's just so many options. Certainly, if you get Victor, that's going to feel like almost winning a championship. It would be a day like almost no other. And I know 86% chance it's not going to happen. So I'm not counting on it. Yet I'm hopeful. You would be silly not to. It feels to me more like an opportunity. It's not so much a dagger if you don't get it, because again, those are pretty good prospects. There are viable trade options as well if you want to pivot to a bit more, I suppose, veteran focus this offseason to put around the young prospects you already have in place. That's an option as well. Any pick in the top 6 should have trade value. So no matter what, you're not going to get a Trey Mann out of this. You're going to get a real asset, be it a blue chip young prospect or a trade. This is not a doomsday scenario. But if you get Victor, it's going to feel like winning a title, at least in a lottery sense. And so I was thinking about going into tonight, if there's any good luck charm that I wanted to bring, and what I settled on. I'm wearing the Justin Verlander Astros jersey that I wore for Game 6 of the 2022 World Series. Now, we should point out that while some will say, oh, Verlander's a playoff choker, not necessarily. He threw 5 innings of 1-run ball in Game 5, which the Rockets, or the Astros, excuse me, won by just 1 run, and that turned out to be the pivotal game. and it led the Rockets or led the Astros, excuse me. God, you can tell where my head is at right now. It led the Astros to the championship. And this feels like the most important Houston sports event since that game 6. So I brought out the Astros Verlander jersey that I wore when they won it all that night. Paolo, do you have any good luck charms? Have you brought anything out for this special evening?
I brought myself. Does that count?
Oh, okay.
I
Jeez.
mean, we've won the lottery every year ever since I've been a fan. So
That is worth noting. As we set up what's going to happen tonight, another reason why it would be silly to be too despondent if they don't end up in the top 4. They have gotten very lucky the last 2 years with these flattened lottery odds, and a lot of Rockets fans weren't used to it because, of course, before this cycle, the Rockets had not been in the lottery in basically a decade. It was all winning all the time in the James Harden era. So it was a quick transition starting in 2021 to this rebuild. And to get the number 2 pick one year, that was Jalen Green, and the number 3 pick the next year, that was Jabari Smith Jr. That's a top 11% outcome, because to get the number 2 pick, you only have a 27% shot. To get a top 3 pick, that's only a 40% shot. And then you do the math and combine getting both of those probabilities, that's top 11%. So if the Rockets don't have luck on their side tonight, you can't be too despondent. You can't say the NBA draft lottery gods hate Houston, because the reality is that the Rockets have already been fairly lucky. And even if they land at number 6 tonight, all in all, it's a pretty damn good outcome when you consider the 3 lottery years as a whole. With all that said, you can't fall for the it's due fallacy. Every drawing is new, just as if you're flipping a coin and it's heads one time, it's not any more likely to be tails on the next flip. Everyone is new. And so this is a monumental opportunity for the Rockets. It's not devastating if they don't get Wemby or Scoot, but it is a heck of an opportunity. And Paolo, I'll say in leading off, one area I disagree with you a little bit. So I do agree with you that I have Scoot Henderson, guard out of the NBA G League Ignite. I do have him number 2 on my board. However, there's been enough intel from the reports I've seen around the league and also some conversations that I've had that I feel confident in saying that some teams, I do not know if the Rockets are one of these, but some teams do have either Brandon Miller out of Alabama or Amin Thompson out of the Overtime Elite program at number 2 on their boards. So for me, I am actually looking at the big cutoff as after 4, because if you can get into those top 4, then even if you're not at 2, there's a decent shot because Scoot is a point guard. What if a team like Detroit that already has a couple of primary ball handlers in Jaden Ivey and Cade Cunningham ends up at 2? They could conceivably trade down and still get Brandon Miller or Amin Thompson, or who knows, maybe they just take Brandon Miller at 2. I believe the Athletics Detroit beat writer said today in the article that he co-wrote with Kelly Eco of the Athletic Houston that he believes the Pistons have Miller number 2 on their board. To me, the teardrop is after that top 4. Even if I see Scoot, and I know you do, as the clear number 2, I think there are enough options with being in the top 4 that if you can tell a team that might be looking at Scoot at 2 that, hey, you can still get Brandon Miller or Amin Thompson, you might have an opportunity to trade up for Scoot if that's who you really want. Or maybe we're wrong, and these teams that think that Brandon Miller or Amin Thompson are better, maybe they're right. And in which case, if the Rockets are at 3 or 4 and get one of those guys, then maybe it's for the best. That's not what I would do, but again, I'm not a scout. There are people that know way more about this than me, and the same goes for you. We're just giving our best guess as fans, media members, bloggers, people that follow the Rockets. We are certainly not scouts for a living, so it's possible that we could be wrong. To me, 4 is the big cutoff because I could see a team that's at 2 maybe trading down a spot or 2 if they could still get Miller or Amin Thompson. I think if they fall to 5 and you're looking at someone like Jarris Walker, Cam Whitmore, the other Thompson twin, it gets a bit dicier in terms of are they willing to drop that far in the first round order. So I would say certainly I'm going to be nervous at picks 5 and 6, also 7 and 8. If the Spurs are picked at 7 or the Hornets at 8, then you'll know the Rockets are going to be 6, because at that point it's clear that teams outside of the top 4 going into the lottery were drawn for those 4 lottery picks. So if the Spurs are at 7, the Hornets are at 8, then guess what? we're going to know before 6 is even pulled out that the Rockets are going to be at that worst case scenario, which they have a 20% probability of being, which is small, but certainly not nothing. It's actually a more likely scenario they get 6 than it is they get Wemby. Unfortunately, that's just the reality of the NBA's new odds. But the other reason that I want to go through this exercise of just live in the moment reaction. Again, the weeks ahead, we're going to talk a lot more about the Rockets specifically and how this pick impacts them. This is a monumental night for the NBA as a whole because the team that gets Victor for the reasons Paolo was laying out is getting a franchise changer. This is the best prospects since LeBron James in the eyes of the scouts, the GMs, the executives, the people that do this for a living. And even if he doesn't go to the Rockets, it is monumentally important in terms of team building, your competition moving forward, to understand the landscape. Does he go to the West or to the East? Is it a big market team or a small market team? Is it someone that you're potentially going to be in competition with, i.e. a regional rival, someone like Dallas that you might be going after the same types of free agents in the future? There's so many possibilities. By the way, for me, Dallas would clearly be the worst case scenario because they're in the West. They're a big market team just like Houston. And if you give them both Luka and Wemby, boy, that would be a formidable force for a very, very long time. So I'm hoping anything but Dallas. Fortunately, they're well back in the lottery. I believe the 10 spot going in. So knock on wood, hopefully that does not happen. But the point is the context of the league as a whole is important because on top of whatever prospect the Rockets end up with, look, when you're trying to build a championship team, some of it just depends on timing. You look back to the 2010s, the Rockets were the victim of awful timing. They had these great teams with James Harden. They never even made the NBA Finals because the Golden State Warriors were in the West. And at the peak of the Rockets in the James Harden era, that was the Warriors at their best with Kevin Durant, and they couldn't even get out of the West, the Rockets, that is. As opposed to now, if the Rockets were a few years later, if the Rockets had that same 2018 team right now, I think they're clearly better than any team currently in the playoffs. I mean, you have teams that were in the mid 40s this year in wins that look like legitimate contenders in the case of the Lakers and the Warriors, who they just beat. It's just a different era. And so timing is part of it. You also look at the 2010s, the decade most recently completed. LeBron James had his team in the NBA Finals for 8 straight years, in large part because the Eastern Conference really sucked in that time period. The first 4 from 2011 through 2014, of course, he was with the Heat, the last 4 with the Cavaliers. But that was a period in which so many stars, for various reasons, ended up going to the Western Conference. And there was so much parity. You had teams like Indiana that basically had just one star in Paul George, and he was a late lottery pick. You had a 60-win Atlanta team that basically didn't have any stars one year. And so the landscape was such that you could have teams come out of nowhere, and it was just easier to build a legitimate contender. And if you had a player evolve into LeBron James, then it was almost like you were guaranteed to be in the finals just because the competition simply was not there. So on top of whoever the Rockets get out of the lottery tonight and eventually the draft on June 22nd, it's also about how this shapes the league as a whole, because guys like Victor and Scoot are potential franchise changers. So beyond just do they go to the Rockets, it's also where does their destination, or how does their destination end up influencing the path to contention that the Rockets are trying to put themselves on as their rebuild continues to phase 2, as we heard Rafael Stone say earlier in the offseason. So for all those reasons, we're going to do a lot more just bigger picture, raw emotion tonight, reacting to the results as they come in. We're just a few minutes away now. And we're going to save the deeper dive for Rockets specific, whatever their pick is. We'll do that in the weeks ahead. Before the lottery, one more thing I want to get off our chest before we transition fully to the draft, or transition back fully to the draft. James Harden. That's the popular talking point this week on Rockets Twitter. I am very well aware, with the Sixers losing in the playoffs, he's going to enter free agency. He has a player option, but of course he's going to exercise it. He took a discount last summer so the Sixers could bring in PJ Tucker and Daniel House Jr. It was always expected that Harden would enter free agency. And at the time, it was thought that he'd get a bigger deal from the Sixers. He just took a temporary pay cut to help them add in a couple more role players, and he could get paid a bit more once he became a free agent the next summer. But it also gives him the option to explore other possibilities. And it's been reported since Christmas that a reunion with the Rockets, we know the ties he has to the Rockets and the city of Houston is a possibility. And with the Sixers going out sad, as the kids say, in Game 7, blown out by the Celtics, that speculation has really kicked in to overdrive this week. And with the Sixers going out, it was such an odd series for Harden, because the only reason why the Sixers were even in Game 7 is because Harden was out of this world good in Game 1 and Game 4. He was the singular reason they won those games. And one of them, Joel Embiid, was not even out there. And then in Game 4, Embiid was out there, but Harden was clearly their best player. So I push back a little bit at this idea that, oh, he's a choker when the lights are at their brightest. Because no, he was really brilliant in a couple of those high stakes games when the series was either tied or they were down a game this series. I would say that he's very inconsistent when the lights are at their brightest. That's a fair characterization, but choking, I wouldn't go that far. I mean, there was plenty of pressure in Game 1 and Game 4 and Game 5, and he was very, very good in those settings. So with all that said, I do understand that he was bad in Game 7 and to an extent in Game 6, especially down the stretch when Philly had a lead and they let Boston come back late. The body language was bad, and that brings back some old scars, especially amongst Rockets fans who never saw Harden quite get over the hump in the playoffs. And there's been some pushback that the Rockets should just avoid him altogether. He's going to turn 34 years old, and that makes him older than the current young core as it is. And then you added some of the baggage with how he left Houston, the fact that he's never been the best playoff performer. Even if you give him the benefit of the doubt the way I do, it's not like he's to the level of Steph Curry, LeBron James, Kevin Durant, his superstar peers of this era, even if he's a tier below them now due to some age-related declines. Look, it is a wart on his resume. But the one thing I do want to say, and if you follow me on Twitter, Ben Dubose, you already know this going in. Look, it would be foolish to entirely rule out the possibility. You have to remind yourself that the Rockets won 22 games or less in each of the last 3 years. So even though they're heading into this offseason with $60 million in salary cap space, a lot of these guys that people on Twitter seem to think might come to the Rockets for more mid-tier salaries might not be so mid-tier if you're signing with one of the NBA's worst teams, because they typically want to win. There's almost always a tax on a rebuilding team like the Rockets. In the case of James Harden, there may actually be a discount. That's part of why the Rockets owe it to themselves to explore. It's not just that he's averaging more than 20 points and 10 assists per game on strong efficiency, nearly 39% from three. He led the league in assists. We know what he can do as a playmaker to try and make the game easier for guys like Jalen Green, Jabari Smith Jr., Alperen Şengün, get them in more competitive environments, all sorts of things that can help their development. Beyond that, since the Rockets are not going to be at a point to win the championship the next couple of years, and that's another reason why you shouldn't worry about the disappointing playoff elimination game performances. Who cares? The next couple of years, the Rockets aren't trying to win a title anyway. It would be foolish to turn your nose up at a player who, because of his interests, may be at the complete opposite end of the extreme of most players. Instead of putting a Rockets tax on James Harden, or James Harden putting a Rockets tax on his potential contract, there may actually be a Rockets discount. And at this stage of the rebuild, when you're not trying to win a title, Rafael Stone needs to look at values. He's talked about that plenty. I think this is a big, big opportunity for the Rockets when you look at a player of that stature with his game being willing to sign with a rebuilding team. It's pretty rare. I am open-minded to the idea that you shouldn't bring him in no matter what. If you want to argue that 4 years, the max salary paying him $50 million a year until he's age 37, if you want to argue that that's too much, that's fine. But I think it's emotional and illogical to say that no matter the cost, you don't want James Harden. For a guy of that production, most of the analytics models that I follow had him as a top 15, top 20 player this season. You should be open to it. It just depends on the cost. We can quibble over exactly what that cost is, how much money, how many years. We can do that in future episodes. But I think the people who are just opposed to it no matter what, in my opinion, Paolo, that's overly emotional. You have to at least be somewhat open to the possibility, given where the Rockets are and given that it's not like they're trying to win a title anyway. This is all about a bridge. This is all about a transition to the next phase. Hopefully 2 or 3 years from now, guys like Jalen, Jabari, whoever they draft tonight, are going to be ready to take the next step. This is just about helping them in that transition, in that developmental cycle. And in that context, if James Harden is willing to give you a discount, which a lot of the reports would indicate that he is, I think you'd be silly, and I think it'd be, quite frankly, emotional and illogical not to consider it, to rule it out entirely, right?
Yeah, man. I think that's a price. I think everybody should have a price at which they're willing to do it. It's just too good of a fit with the on-court needs. I think it's valid if you don't want to give him more than 3 years or more than 2 years. I think it's valid if you don't want to get him if Scoot Henderson is an option. I think that there's a lot of valid arguments and situations where people think it doesn't make sense, and we can argue and go back and forth on that. But just, if you're just outright don't want him because he walked away or because he's a playoff joker or whatever you may want to say, that just doesn't make sense. First of all, because if we get to the playoffs and he chokes there, that's a massive improvement versus what we're doing right now. And if you're butthurt because he left, I mean, look at it this way: if he hadn't left, we would be starting our rebuild probably this year, and we'd have, instead of having 3 years of getting top picks, we'd be feeding picks to
Yes.
the Thunder right away. So in a sense, it was a little bit of a blessing in disguise. That being said, we are 1 minute and a half away. Do you have your feed ready?
Yeah, I do. But I should note that while it technically starts at 7, it's going to be well after that when they actually start drawing the names. So we have a little bit more time. But yeah, I've got my feed ready. As far as closing out the loop on Harden, look, the way I am going into this free agency period, there's no perfect player, and the Rockets are not at a point in their transition from rebuild to contending to where it makes sense to say, no matter what, give this guy a blank check because he's the final piece to the puzzle. No, all these guys have warts. They're conditional. With Harden, it's his age. With Kyrie Irving, the other big, huge free agent available this summer, it's all the off-court concerns, and he's in his 30s as well. With other guys, they're good players, but they're not clearly stars. None of them are perfect. So it's all conditional on what the contract is relative to their value. And if a guy who most metrics see as a top 15, top 20 player, at least in the regular season, is willing to give you a nice deal, the way many of the reports indicate that James Harden is, it would be silly to rule it out just because you have harsh feelings over the way he left or because you're worried about playoff performance with this team not even being close to the playoffs as it is. Those are silly reasons. And to Paolo's point about the way Harden left. Look, let's just be real. Harden, as Paolo said, did the Rockets a favor. I saw someone the other day when the LeBron leaving Cleveland and coming back scenario was brought up, not saying Harden is LeBron James in terms of his ability as a player, but it's, I think, emotionally a similar storyline. LeBron actually did the Cavaliers worse. Someone was trying to argue in my mentions that LeBron only left as a free agent. He didn't force a trade. Actually, Harden forcing a trade was better for the Rockets. Him just playing out the contract and leaving in 2022. And then all of a sudden, the Rockets going straight to the bottom, having only one lottery pick until the rest of the trades or the rest of the assets from the Rush trade come due starting in 2024. That would have been terrible. Harden, the way it played out, did the Rockets a favor. And who knows? Maybe he'll do him a favor again. The Rockets worked with him. They got him to one of the destinations of his choosing. They didn't make it acrimonious. Less than 2 months after the trade, Tillman Fertitta announced that they were going to retire his jersey one day. Maybe that makes Harden even more likely to give the Rockets a bit of a discount in these negotiations. That's all I would say, is that for the Rockets, all of this is relative to value. You are not at a point in your rebuild where you say, I've got to have this guy or I've got to avoid this guy. It's all about what the value of the deal is and how it fits into your long-term puzzle. And not saying I would 100% do it for Harden. There are some points that I would walk away, but you have to at least keep it open mind. The last thing I'll say about Harden as we transition back to the lottery, because the picks are about to start rolling in, I've seen some speculation that the Rockets, if they get or they feel they have Harden and they get a pick that might put them in position to get Scoot Henderson or maybe even Amin Thompson, that they might not do it because Harden would be the primary ball handler. I want to say going into this, I do not think that is even remotely a consideration. I think that's lazy aggregation, people putting together basically 2 and 2, just little tidbits. Oh, the Rockets are interested in James Harden. You're hearing some talk around the league that Scoot Henderson might not be a lock at number 2. The Rockets in many of these mock drafts are picking it 2 simply because that's their spot going into the lottery. And oh, let's just say the Rockets are going Brandon Miller because they feel they have James Harden. That's supposition. I can say confidently from talking to people within the Rockets, they are not going to let a 34-year-old James Harden dictate their decision making, even if he is coming. And that's not a guarantee in my opinion, but even if James Harden is coming, I don't think his presence is going to impact their thought process on an asset as important as a top 6 pick in this draft. When you're talking about someone that's 19 or 20 years old, this is someone who could be a fixture for the next 10 to 15 years of Houston Rockets basketball if everything works out right. With James Harden, even if he does come back, you're talking 2 or 3 years most likely as a bridge to your next contender. This is an asset that could actually be a foundational piece of it. So I'm not going to tell you 100% that the Rockets would take a point guard, even though it is a need. And I think that's part of one of the reasons they would look for James Harden as opposed to some of the mid-tier guys. We already have a pretty deep rotation. We've talked about that in the past. James Harden, you could just slide right in. You know they need a point guard. You can play Kevin Porter Jr. either at the wing and or off the bench as a 6-man, a backup combo guard. It would be easy to drop Harden in as opposed to you sign a couple of mid-tier guys. Well, you've also got to subtract from your current rotation. It's pretty easy to drop Harden in. And so I know it's not quite as easy to do if you bring in Harden with someone like Scoot Henderson. But what I will say is that the Rockets are going to think long-term with this pick, whether they make it, whether they trade it, it's going to be what's in the best interest of them and the long haul as they try and get back to contention. It's not going to be about a temporary Band-Aid. So while I'm not going to guarantee that if Scoot Henderson's on the board for them that they'll take him, no, it's entirely possible. They could be one of the teams that likes Brandon Miller or Amin Thompson more. What I will guarantee is if the Rockets ultimately passed on Scoot Henderson or any lead ball handler for that matter, it would not be because of James Harden. It would be because they simply view that player, rightly or wrongly, as the better long-term prospect. They are not dumb. James Harden is a bridge. Even if he fits now, even if he's a clean fit, he is a short-term Band-Aid for 2 to 3 years as you try to transition to relevancy. He is not a part of your long-term puzzle. We talked about that in the past as the Rockets actually try to get back to title contention, likely 3+ years down the line. So with that, hopefully that will calm fears. We'll talk a bit more in a few moments once the picks are actually counted down. I just wanted to clarify that anybody concerned that the Rockets are going to let the presence of Harden impact their decision-making with an asset as premium as a top 6 pick in a pretty strong draft, I'm confident in saying that's not going to happen. Paolo, does that make you feel any better?
It does, but it a little better when we get confirmation that they had Scoot number 2.
Fair enough.
I just value, just personally, I just value what a prospect like Scoot brings so much, and because he is so unique, right? People look at it and they say, "Oh, this guy is like Russell Westbrook like version 2 or whatever." I see so much difference between them. I think Scoot is much more in control when he drives. Think natural playmakers, and we've learned to value this as Rockets fans with the KPJ point guard experience experiment, and other guys that we've tried to put there. That feel for the game from your lead guard, for playmaking wise, rhythm wise, everything is invaluable. And Scoot has that. And then besides that, something that we've learned to value with James Harden is how acceleration is important, but deceleration is the real killer in most NBA guards. And Scoot has that to a T as well. Right now, he can get to the rim at will, and he can decelerate and get a little floater or get a mid-range shot, and he's an elite mid-range shooter. He's not quite an average 3-point shooter just yet, but he is willing to shoot them. He shoots them at a 32% clip, if I'm not mistaken, during last year. He does it from the actual NBA line because he played in the G League. So I just think that archetype and those traits in specific on a point guard are just so valuable that to me he's clear number 2, and he's a tier above the other 2 guys. That being Amen and Brandon Miller. But I could be wrong.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've been right. I think the last two drafts in who the Rockets valued the most.
Yeah.
So I've been pretty much in
You
sync
were a year
with,
ago for sure.
and I was 2 years ago as well. I was a big
Yeah.
Jalen Green guy. So hopefully I'm right again. Who knows? That being said, it's the nerves are starting to creep in. Okay, I'm
All right.
in panic
Well, the
mode.
picks are going now, so we're done. Let's get to the picks. And keep in mind, as they show the Ernst & Young accounting folks on screen,
Oh God.
they supervise the process. They're pulling 4 lottery balls. It's not frozen envelopes back in the day, as I discussed in my pod with Clay Allen, the Rockets' actual drawing room representative a couple of weeks ago. This is very, very difficult to actually fix, even if you wanted to, because of the 4-digit combinations. There's a third-party accounting firm overseeing it. And remember, they're just drawing for the 4 lottery picks, so there's an order, and if one of these teams at the back end of the lottery is not chosen, it means they jumped into the top 4.
Okay. First one, please chalk. Please New Orleans. Okay.
It is.
Okay.
Chalk.
It's fine.
Next should be Toronto.
Please Toronto next.
Nothing surprising yet.
Okay.
It's Toronto.
OKC.
Oklahoma City. This is a big one. It'd be disappointing if Oklahoma City jumps.
Please show OKC. Please show OKC. Okay.
Whew.
It's not OKC.
Exhale.
Okay.
Next should be
now
Chicago.
It's Chicago. Chicago's a friendly team. I mean, I hope they don't jump, but still. Oh, Chicago jumped?
No, it's 2. Wait. It's Chicago because it's going to Orlando.
They didn't jump.
They lost the pick. They didn't drop. Everything, or they didn't jump. Everything is as it is. 10. This should be Dallas. This is big.
Please, Dallas.
It is.
They did not jump.
Ooh.
It's a massive.
Now it's getting close.
For the competitive balance of the league.
Utah.
If this is Portland, we're 6th. This cannot be Portland.
It's Utah. Everything is as is.
Okay.
Next should be Washington. That's big. None of the, fringe Western
8th
Conference
cannot be
teams.
Charlotte. This cannot be Charlotte, otherwise we're 6th. Okay.
It's Washington. Everything is as it is so far. No surprises. Do not be.
It's not San Antonio now.
Well, it can't be San Antonio.
Not San Antonio.
No, it could be. It's not. It's the Pacers.
It's still the same.
And here we go.
And now it could be us at any point.
Yes. Oh, God. Here we go.
Okay,
it's not. The Rockets are in the top 5. Next should be Portland. The worst case scenario the Rockets have avoided.
Please, not us. It's not us.
Not.
Detroit
the Rockets are in the top 4.
Detroit
the Pistons fell. Now there's going to be a very long, intense commercial break. But wow.
It could be us, dude. It could be us.
As I said going in, the Rockets, the Spurs, the Hornets, and Blazers, the worst has been avoided. As I was telling you when we started this pod, I'm having a huge sigh of relief. Obviously, I want Wemby.
Dude,
but
Detroit just got our doomsday scenario from the last 2 seasons.
I think, and I know you're passionate about Scoot, but I think getting in the top 4 is big because even if the Rockets are at 4, I think there's a world where either A, the people that really like Brendan Miller or Amin Thompson are right, or B, there's a world in which one of those teams ends up getting number 2. Well, I guess the Pistons won't. That was one of the scenarios. And you could potentially trade for that, or maybe they just pass up Scoot altogether because he's a point guard. He has slightly less versatility.
Ben, we won the lottery 3 years in a row.
Yeah, let's give a shout out to Clay Allen.
Never happened.
Holy
this has
fuck.
never happened.
Well, this podcast will be R-rated. We'll leave that in. But
oh, Jesus Christ.
Clay Allen, Rockets General Counsel. He has been the man in the room every time. 2021, 2022, 2023. Every year to get in the top 4 to win one of the lottery picks, it's basically a 50-50 probability. Even if you have one of the 3 worst records, which are maximum odds. The Rockets this year, 52%. To win a 52% coin flip every time, that in and of itself is amazing.
It's like a 12.5% chance.
Yeah, and what's incredible is that the last 2 years, it's not like just won the coin flip because they weren't at 4 either of those years. They were at 2 one year and 3 the other.
It is, so for reference, it is more likely to get Victor Wembanyama in this draft than it would be to be top 4 3 years in a row.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
This is just nuts. For them to thread the needle 3 years in a row, I know there's still the upside of Victor or Scoot, but getting in the top 4, that is big time upside. That is
These
Boy.
ad breaks are gonna kill me.
Yeah. Oh, they're killing me too. I mean, it's a combination of obvious anticipation, but also just sigh of relief. They have
I
avoided the
mean,
worst case scenario. They are going to get a blue chipper out of this. Even though I don't have them in the level of Scoot, you can talk me into Amin Thompson or Brandon Miller. You absolutely can. You can also talk me in the scenario where that pick is a really attractive trade asset, be it maybe they are able to move up for Scoot Henderson, as I've referenced a few times, or maybe they put it on the market and they say we already have enough young guys. This is a possibility to add a veteran and add some more experience to
wait.
not necessarily James Harden level experience, but not all 19 and 20-year-olds. It just gives you so many options to be in the top 4. I just think at a bare minimum, you've got a great asset out of this.
So who's the top 4? The top 4 is Houston, San Antonio, Charlotte,
Charlotte,
and Portland.
yes.
So if it's Portland, Charlotte, or
And
Charlotte,
Charlotte has LaMelo Ball.
yeah, pick 2 might not be pick 2
And
might not be
Portland,
good if it's Portland or Charlotte.
yeah, it's an interesting scenario for sure.
San Antonio's there. I think they're gonna get one. I think one San Antonio. Okay, we're back. Oh God.
I'm preparing for 4 simply because the Rockets have been so lucky with the draws. Man, can you imagine what the draft party is like that the Summit guys put on? They invited me to it, of course, but I could never be seen out in public during this. I'm just going to be honest. I'm way too nervous. The people that do that every year, I mean, credit to them. I am a nervous effing wreck during this.
Jesus, man.
I am
Showing
not.
LeBron James highlights, dude. What? Oh
Yeah.
God.
I am not fit for public consumption right now. But yeah, fitting, of course, to showing LeBron James highlights because Lakers Nuggets game 1 of the Western Conference Finals starts in a few minutes. But yeah, it's fitting because, of course, we're talking about Victor Wembanyama,
so
20 years later,
I guess
the best prospect since LeBron.
I'll set my threshold at 3. Because I think at 3 there's a chance Scoot falls to 3. But that's gonna be so painful to wait for. That's gonna be so painful to wait for. Like if we get 3.
I know, in the uncertainty, yeah.
Okay,
and if you,
here we go.
And if you potentially have Brandon Miller, think of all the shot creation puns we're going to have to endure.
Yep. Okay. There's Brendan Roy, Mark Williams. I don't know who the Spurs guy is.
Beautiful. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Pick number 4 is.
It's us. Okay.
All right. Not ideal, but whatever. We'll take it. Not San Antonio. Damn it. It's Charlotte or San Antonio. I think it's going to be San Antonio.
It's going to be San Antonio. This is rigged.
Yep.
They gave it
Peter Holt slam. Yep. And for the record, we'll get some clarity on this. I do not think that losing the coin flip lost the Rockets the Victor Wembanyama combination. It does suck that he's going to San Antonio. I'm sure there's some going to say, well, if the Rockets had won that coin flip with the Spurs, would they have had the combination? I do not have this confirmed. I will work to do it, and then I'll put it out on Twitter. But as I understand it, the 140 combinations, and one of which was the winning one for the Spurs, were locked in at the end of the season because the 3 teams with the worst records were the Rockets, the Pistons, and the Spurs. I do not think that they had, 140 combinations for, slot 2 versus slot 3 because they're all the same. It's all the same number of combinations. As I understand it, the coin flip was just in case both the Rockets and Spurs missed out on the lottery, then who ends up picking higher. And that was what gave the Rockets a floor of pick 6 instead of pick number 7. So I know that's a little bit of, I guess, a limited silver lining, but I don't think the Rockets lost in this case a huge asset simply due to the coin flip. I think they lost it just due to the lottery. With all that said, though, while it sucks that he's going to the West,
he seems happy. I think this is what he wanted.
Yeah, I do think that the Rockets, they are rivals of the Spurs. Let's be clear about that. But Houston is a much bigger market. They do have certain institutional advantages especially in an NBA that's going increasingly global, with market size becoming even more important. This is not like the Rockets are all of a sudden eons behind the Spurs. No, this gives the Spurs a competitive chance, and it makes the Western Conference even tougher. But I don't think you should view it as a dagger because it's the Spurs right down the road on I-10. I think it's, the same as any other Western Conference team, except for the Mavs. The Mavs would have been the absolute worst case scenario because that's the one team that has almost identical odds to the Rockets, or I shouldn't say identical odds, identical background when it comes to how you're trying to put a contender together, market size, part of the country, all the business factors. Dallas and Houston are so close. San Antonio is a bit different. So it's not the worst case scenario. It's not ideal. What I will say for the Rockets, I mentioned going in, they needed to get in the top 4. That was my big cutoff, and they were able to get in that. I do wonder, at least on paper, both the Blazers and the Hornets, who are at 3 and 2 respectively, have point guards. The Blazers have Damian Lillard. The Hornets have LaMelo Ball. Now, that does not guarantee they're going to pass up on Scoot Henderson. After all, it's entirely possible that one or both of those guys could ask for trades, or maybe their teams decide that Scoot Henderson is just that good and maybe they just want to be proactive, especially in the case of Damian Lillard, who's now in his 30s. But at least with those two teams being in front of you at 2 or 3, to me, that adds considerably more uncertainty in that top 4 to where maybe Scoot falls, or maybe the Rockets, if they really want him, are able to trade up. To me, while it sucks that the Spurs got Wemby, as far as the rest of it, it's not all that bad.
Yeah, I mean, with the Blazers behind Damian Lillard, they still have Anthony Simons, who is averaging like 21 and 4 on elite efficiency with a over 2 assist to turnover ratio. So they have 2 point guards there. But I don't think Scoot falls to 4. I think if the Rockets want to trade up for him, that may be a possibility. Whether the Rockets want to do that or not, who knows? Who knows what it would cost even. So if you're, I'm just trying to figure that out in my head. If you're Charlotte, the 2 guys that you have, that, at least in my opinion, that are, here for the future are probably LaMelo Ball and maybe Mark Williams, which means all of their kind of gaps are on the wings, right? So who knows what they will be after. They could. I mean, LaMelo Ball is I think 6'7". He has the size. He just doesn't have the toughness to play defense at any position. But they could try Scoot and LaMelo together as a backcourt, and that could be fun. But about it being the Spurs, it made sense since the beginning for it to be the Spurs. It's just, I guess it's Pop's last reward. I guess he'll finish his coaching career, coaching up what could be a GOAT level player by the time it's all said and done. So, and it's supposedly a team with a good structure. They don't really have any cornerstone pieces in place already. So Wemby's probably going to get freedom to do whatever he wants. But it might be an interesting clash, because while he might get to do anything he wants, Pop is also, kind of a strict coach. And when we know from what we've heard in interviews that Wemby's someone who likes to be given his freedom, so we'll see how that goes. I don't think we're that far behind the Spurs or behind at all the Spurs.
Same.
It's just, I mean, they got a jump start on the biggest jump start they could ever ask for on their rebuild. And then what do you mean for the Rockets? I mean, what does this mean for the James Harden pursuit? I mean, if it were Scoot, it would kind of mess up with the James Harden debate. I wonder if Amen Thompson does the same thing. I'm personally not too high on him, but we all know over the next few months until the draft, I'm gonna sell myself on him and think he's the superstar.
Yeah.
So, but I guess the obvious pick between him and Miller, I would say, is probably Miller right now, just from a positional standpoint. considering we have them in the same tier.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, ideally, I'd be calling Charlotte right now, seeing what they want for pick 2, but we'll see what happens.
Yep. I would say my general mood is slightly down, but not devastated. It's not 5 or 6. And it's just one of those things you would love to have gotten Wemby, but at the same time, when you consider what they've already got in the last couple of years, it's tough to feel unlucky. It's just one of those things. It feels like, you had a great opportunity, you didn't get it, but it's tough for me to be that down in the grand scheme. They're still going to get a pretty strong asset out of this.
Wait, they leaked it. So if you were paying attention, when they picked up the envelopes,
Yeah.
and they were carrying them onto the stage, apparently there was a camera that was a little bit too low, and you can see the Spurs logo at the bottom of all the envelopes.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Damn.
missed that.
And I'm glad we did. At least it made for a better reaction, I guess.
And for a little bit of perspective, so Detroit the last 2 years had the same odds that the Rockets did. Let me confirm that real quick. I know they did this year. Were the Pistons in the bottom 3 a year ago? Yes, they were. And the Pistons were at 5 both times. So for people complaining, and again, it's not all bad. Jaden Ivey had a nice rookie season. But the Pistons and Rockets had the same odds the last 2 years. The Rockets ended up at 3 and 4, winning lottery picks both times. The Pistons did not win a lottery pick and were at 5 both years. So to me, that's sort of useful perspective that you can take out of this.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it's underwhelming, but at the same time, you just can't say that you weren't lucky over the last 3 years. I think, as I said, I don't think any team has ever won the lottery, or winning the lottery by definition is jumping into the top 4. 4 teams win the lottery every year. Winning the lottery 3 times in a row is really lucky. So we can't really complain, but at the same time, it's felt like, last year, yes, we won the lottery, yes, we got into the top 3, but we just missed out on, and who knows, I mean, considering their career so far, we don't know who's going to be better. But at the time, like, Cade was like the number 1 guy, and we got the guy just below. Last year, I mean, for me, tier 1 was Paolo and Chet, and then we got Jabari, who was the guy just below. This year, the tier 1 to me was Wemby and Scoot, and we're gonna get one of the guys that are just below. So we can't say that we were unlucky, because we were very lucky, but you have to wonder who's better off. A team like Orlando that got lucky and got number 1, and then got, what was it, 6 and 5 the other 2 years, or a team like Detroit who got number 1 and got Cade and then got pick 4 and pick 5 the 2 years afterwards, or a team that couldn't quite crack that top tier on any of the drafts but got the guy just below, like in all 3 of them, versus the other examples that I provided.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that will do it for one pod, especially because, Paolo, I know you're running on fumes. It's after 1 a.m. in Portugal and you're dealing with COVID. I think we'll be in a better position in a few days to talk about the options too, because part of it, I don't want to do a disservice to guys like Amin Thompson or Brandon Miller. They're really, really good prospects because, until 10 minutes ago, we had, even if we knew it was a slim chance, a chance at even Wemby, but at number 2, a clear path to Scoot Henderson. Now there's more uncertainty. Again, it's not all bad. Statistically, you certainly were not unlucky by any means, but and there's certainly a little bit of jealousy too, because the Rockets have been doing this for 3 years and they never got the top pick. The Spurs, this was the first year that they totally bottomed out and they get the 1. Of course, that's how, historically, that's been the bedrock of their franchise. They got David Robinson that way. They got Tim Duncan that way. It just is what it is. And we'll see if Victor Wembanyama follows in their footsteps. But yeah, the Rockets are still in a good place overall. It definitely brings more competition into the state of Texas, puts more spotlight on the Southwest Division. Boy, between Wemby, John Morant, Luka, Zion. Of course, Shaw and Zion have their own concerns, but still, at least on paper, those are big time talents. Boy, you have to be hoping if you're the Rockets that Jalen, Jabari, Şengün, whoever you draft this year is able to potentially make the leap into that conversation, or who knows, maybe they're able to sign in free agency or trade for one of those guys in the years ahead. Anyway, Paolo, if you're okay, we can wrap it here. Is there anything else that you wanted to add?
Yeah, I'm gonna spend the next few days with COVID watching as much Amen Thompson as I can, because I'm guessing that's gonna be the guy that's gonna be left first.
I will just tell you, I would not make that assumption. I've talked to some people that I trust that tell me that, and I'm not saying it tonight, this was a conversation I had weeks ago, that insisted to me that Amen Thompson was second on a lot of teams' boards. Now, I don't know what a lot is, but it didn't sound like one or two. I also don't know if the Rockets are one of those teams. So, no, I'm not saying that necessarily the Rockets are one of them. But I do think there's a world in which, it's just tough to say with Portland and Charlotte, especially because what you know about those teams, at least now, they're both defined by having an all-star point guard. So I think there's a bit more uncertainty than people think. I still think I would agree with you that Amen Thompson is the most likely scenario, but I don't think it's a done deal. So I would watch a little bit of Brandon Miller as well. I would also say you can watch Scoot Henderson, but A, I think you've already done that, and B, I don't think you want to set yourself up for the disappointment if it doesn't happen, right?
Yeah, I guess. I'm looking forward to seeing what the reporting says in the next few days to see if, just because you got 4 doesn't mean you gotta stay at 4. And I think the two teams that are ahead of us are teams that could possibly look into trading their picks or be more open to it than. I mean, if the Spurs got picked too, that pick was not moving for anything. But that was Scoot Henderson, and that's it. So it'll be interesting not to see if those teams are willing to trade it, because I think that's going to be just a massive leverage game leading into the draft. But I'll be interested to see how the Rockets themselves feel about what their top 4 is, and how much of a gap there may be between 2 and 4, to see if if they would be interested in trading up. Or, I mean, especially with James Harden being an option, I know you wouldn't draft a different guy because of James Harden, but James Harden coming in, making your willingness to spend extra assets to move up, I think that may be a thing that changes. I don't know. So yeah, I guess we'll see what the reports are over the next few weeks. And hey, draft season starts now.
Yeah, I agree. We'll pick up a lot more in the weeks ahead, and I'm sure we'll be in a better mood in a few days. Just a little bit, don't want to say bummed, just slightly melancholy now since it's a bit of a missed opportunity. We'll be a bit perkier in a few days, and hopefully Paolo will be, because in addition to letting some time pass, getting more perspective, Paolo also will hopefully be past COVID. So hopefully our next episode will have more perspective. We'll try and get a draft analyst on, and we will go from there. Anyway, with that, we will put this draft lottery episode of the Logger Line to bed. For Paolo Alves, I'm Ben Dubose. If you want more insight from us before our next episode, the best way to get that is on Twitter. I'm on there at Ben Dubose. Paolo is on there at Paolo Alves NBA. The show is on there, the Logger Line, at the Logger Line. And if you go there, you can find our link tree. That's how you can find links to all of our friends, partners, and sponsors. Sports Talk 790, Rockets Wire, Carbach Brewing. Just hit up our link tree and you can access all of their content and show them some love. Beyond that, you can also find all of our distributors, Apple, Google, Spotify, and you can access all of our episodes there as well. With that, we will adjourn. For Paolo, I'm Ben. Thanks as always for listening, and please come back soon for another new episode of The Logger Line.